Hi all, Connie here. Let's talk about changing colors. So there are a lot of different ways that you can change colors. I'm going to just demonstrate one of them today. This is the way I change colors when I'm switching to a brand new color, or if I'm only going to be doing striping at the ends of short rows, usually single crochet, maybe half double crochet, or a textured row where I'm not carrying the yarn up too high. Okay, so here I've got a swatch of just some double crochets, and what we're going to do in order to switch to our new color, we're going to work our last stitch of the current row to its last step. So what that means for double crochet, we yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on the hook, and then you yarn over and pull through 2 loops twice. But to change colors, what we're going to do is we're going to stop here. So this is the last step of the double crochet, right? You would yarn over and pull through those 2 loops to complete your stitch. So this is where we're going to stop to change colors. I'm going to drop color 1, pick up color 2, and then I'm going to yarn over. I'm basically just grabbing the yarn there, and then I'm going to use it to complete the stitch by pulling it through those 2 loops. Now, if I want to pick this back up, our first color, if I want to pick this back up at the end of not the next row, but 2 rows, then I would lay this over the top of our new color and trap it in my turning chain, right? So let's switch to single crochets here. It'll go a little bit faster, and I want to show you how you change color with a single crochet as well. So I'm just going to boogie on across here and then turn around and go back. And also, so look here, this is our last stitch on the row. It's a little bit hard to see it sometimes. So when you do the first stitch of your new row, if you have trouble finding it when you get back to it, throw a stitch marker in there. So just put your stitch marker in the same spot where you would insert your hook when you get back to this at the end of the next row. Okay? All right, so now we're going back across. We're going to go all the way to our last stitch. And then we're going to stop because we're going to pick up that first color. We're going to pick up that gray. All right, so here's our last stitch right here. And now we're doing single crochets, right? So I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. And this is where I'm going to stop for the single crochet because our last step would be to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops, right? So I'm going to drop the working yarn. I'm going to pick up the new yarn, which is the gray that we carried up the side originally, and I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to finish this stitch with that new color, right? And when you do this, you want to be mindful of your tension. So if you pull too tightly, it's going to cause the side of your fabric to pucker. So you don't want to pull too tightly. You also don't want it to be too loose because if it's too loose, it's going to stick out to the side. You can snag it and your row ends will splay out a little bit. So be mindful of your tension. Don't pull it down too tight, but make sure that it's snug. Now, again, if we want to pick this color up at the end of the next row, we want to trap it when we do our turning chain. So if we were going to do double crochets on the next row, then I might want to fold this over for all of my turning chain, right? You can also work this into an alternative turning chain, like the chainless double crochet or something like that. Just lay it over as you work the steps of the stitch. So there, see how far up we've carried this yarn so that we can pick it back up at the end of the next row. So, whoops, that is our turning chain of 3, which does count as our first stitch. So we don't want to do that. We want to skip to the second stitch. All right, like I said though, you can do the same thing, capturing this carried yarn inside an alternative turning chain as well. So here is our stitch marker. This is our last stitch, right? We marked it. So we're going to pull that out. Work our last stitch. And we're going to turn around and go back. All right, so let's do a chainless double crochet here, just for giggles, right? And again, same thing. You can just lay that working yarn over the top of it as you are working the steps of the stitch, right? And then you could lay it back over at this point, and then you continue on. So that's if you were doing a chainless double crochet instead of the turning chain of 3. I usually find it's easier to capture stitches with a chain than with a chainless stitch though. All right, so here's our second to last stitch, right? Because the chain 3 counts as a stitch in this case. So here we're going to work into the top of the turning chain. So I insert my hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. And at this point, I can lay this yarn over again to bring it up inside this double crochet, just a little bit more concealment of that edge there. All right, and so this is the last step of our double crochet, right? So we're going to yarn over and complete this stitch with a new color. And then again, if we want to carry this up, lay it over as you do your turning chain. Or let's do a chainless. So that's kind of already laid over. Can you see that it's laid over the top there? All right, and then we would insert our hook. It's already there. Pull it through here, and then you could bring it back forward this way. And then that's enclosed now into your chainless double crochet. So let's compare those two edges. Let me do one more stitch here. So this is the chainless double crochet with the yarn captured along the side. And then down here is our chain 3, right? So again, as most of you know, that chain 3 leaves a little bit of a gap, whereas the alternative turning chains don't usually. But that's a subject for another another video, right? I just wanted you to see the difference between working that chainless double crochet here, focus please, and the turning chain of 3. So again, it's a little bit easier to capture your yarn as you're working through there, but it gives you that gap instead. So let's pause here. Let me actually back up a little bit. Now, if we were going to change colors in the middle of this row, say we're doing color work, it would function the same way, all right? So we would work this stitch to the last step. We would add in our second color to finish the stitch. And you can work over the top of this yarn, or you can leave it behind if you're only doing one stitch. You kind of got to experiment with it and see how you prefer it. All right, drop that yarn, pick this one up, finish the stitch. Do our next stitch, working over the top. Last step, drop that yarn, pick up the new one. So this is how you might change colors doing color work in the center of your row, right? Drop, pick up, work over the top, drop, pick up, right? And then, so here I'm going to carry it across kind of in the middle of the stitch there. I didn't put a stitch marker in here. It would have been easier to get into that spot if I had. All right, and now let's say we wanted to switch back to this. We just drop that old color and pick this new one up, okay? So that's how you change colors, both in the middle of a row and on the ends. And let's take a look at the back too, so you can see, bring it in closer here. So right there, that is our carried blue. That one's a little bit easier to see. Here's the carried gray, but that's the carried blue, right? So it works. Kind of pull this apart right there. That's where we worked on top of it, where we captured it inside there and then carried it up. So that's the back side of, and then this right here is where I just brought it from the edge over here. But, you know, if you were working this in rows, you could conceal that by working over the top of it as well when you do the stitch into that stitch, right? So it's all about keeping your tension even, especially coming up these sides where you're changing colors. And then you're finishing the last step of the last stitch with your new color, right? Okay, that is a funny looking little swatch of changing colors at the ends of the rows and within the center as well, because we use the same method. All right, I will see you next time. Bye.